My name is Detective Pierce. Most of the time, my cases lead me into the alleys of the city, the shadows of restaurants, or the dark corners of an amusement park. But this time the case took me far from the noise of the streets, into a place where silence itself felt alive. I was called to an abandoned observatory standing on the edge of a cliff, overlooking a forest that had swallowed whole villages long ago. It had been shut down decades earlier, its telescopes rusting under layers of dust, its corridors echoing with nothing but wind. The call came late at night, as most of them do. A researcher, pale and shaking, stood in my office doorway. He told me of colleagues disappearing one by one after entering the old observatory to recover documents left behind in the archives. He spoke of strange lights above the dome at night, voices whispering in the static of old radios, and shadows moving across the glass even when the place was empty. I didn't believe him at first. Stories like this always grow with fear, but the way his eyes darted around the room told me this was no ordinary scare. When I finally arrived at the site, I understood. The observatory towered like a corpse of steel and stone, its dome cracked, a massive telescope jutting upward like the bones of a creature left for dead. The gate had rusted open, creaking in the wind. I stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the thick dust. The air was heavy, carrying the stale stench of mold and burned wires. In the main hall, I found remnants of scientific life, broken blackboards with chalk equations, filing cabinets forced open, photographs of stars and galaxies curling at the edges. But something didn't fit. On one of the chalkboards, fresh words had been written in jagged, frantic strokes. "We are not alone inside." The handwriting was uneven, almost desperate. I ran my gloved fingers across it, still faintly smudged, as if written days ago, not decades. The silence of the building pressed against my ears. I could hear my own breathing, the faint scratch of rats in the walls, and something else, something like a low hum. It came from deep within the dome above. I made my way up the spiral staircase. The steps groaned under my weight, the metal railing slick with rust. As I climbed, the hum grew louder, pulsing through the structure like a heartbeat. When I reached the top, I aimed my flashlight across the telescope chamber, thus loaded in the air like ash. The giant machine loomed in the dark, its lenses cracked, its body scarred by decades of neglect. But the hum wasn't coming from the telescope, it was coming from behind it. There, against the curved wall of the dome, stood an old projector. Its wheels were still turning, powered by something unseen. Light flickered across the dome's interior, playing not stars, not planets, but shapes, figures moving, writhing, shifting in ways that no human body should. I stood frozen, watching shadows crawl across the walls as if alive. And then, in the flicker of the light, I saw her, a woman in a torn lab coat, face pale, eyes wide. She was staring directly at me, her lips moving silently. Before I could speak, the light snapped off, the hum stopped, and the dome fell into suffocating darkness. My hand tightened around the flashlight. I knew then, this observatory wasn't abandoned. It was waiting, and whatever was inside didn't want me to leave. The silence after the projector died was worse than the sound itself. The kind of silence that presses against your chest, makes your pulse louder than footsteps. My flashlight beam jittered across the dome, revealing nothing but dust and shadows. But I knew what I had seen. A woman, her lips moving as though she were trying to speak. I forced myself forward, circling around the telescope. My boots echoed on the metal floor, hollow and sharp. Behind the massive machine, I found the projector sitting crooked on a tripod, its wheels motionless now. The power cord trailed into the shadows, but when I followed it, I saw it wasn't plugged into anything. That wasn't possible. I crouched, running my fingers along the cold floor, searching for an explanation. My glove brushed something sticky. I lifted my hand into the beam of light. Dark crimson, old blood, smeared into the cracks of the steel plate. I straightened quickly, scanning the room again. My gut told me I wasn't alone. A metallic clatter broke the silence. I swung the flashlight toward the source, the far side of the dome, near a ladder that climbed into the maintenance rafter. Something had moved. I hurried across, boots crunching broken glass beneath me. The ladder was swaying slightly, as if someone had just climbed it. I pointed my light upward. For a split second, I thought I saw a hand gripping the rungs near the top. Pale, skeletal, but when I blinked, it was gone. The ladder creaked. Then still, I climbed. Every step felt like a mistake, but the job doesn't allow for hesitation. The higher higher I went, the stronger the stench of rust and damp grew, mixed with something sour, the smell of rot. At the top, I found a narrow catwalk that circled the dome. My flashlight beam swept across the rafters, revealing old tools, coiled cables, and piles of dust. And then I froze. Carved into the metal railing were words, dozens of them, layered over each other like frantic notes scrawled in the dark. Names, dates, messages. They are watching. The stars are wrong. Don't listen to the voices. And over again, the same phrase carved deeper than the rest. Do not open the lens. I turned toward the telescope's massive glass, cracked but still intact. My beam caught something faint on its surface. Streaks of handprints pressed against the inside, as if someone had been trapped within, clawing to escape. The sound came then, a whisper, carried through the chamber like static, faint, broken, like voices from a radio tuned halfway between stations. I held my breath. The whispers weren't random. They were calling my name. Fierce detective ears. The catwalk groaned under me. I whipped around, and there she was again, the woman in the torn lab coat, standing at the far side of the platform, her face pale in the beam. This time, her lips moved, and I heard the words, faint but clear, "You shouldn't have come here." I raised my light, and she vanished. Not into shadow, not into smoke. She simply blinked out of existence. I stood there, trembling, every instinct screaming to leave, but leaving wasn't an option. Not with the missing people, not with the blood on the floor. I descended quickly, back into the main chamber. As my boots hit the ground, I noticed something I hadn't before. The filing cabinets I had seen earlier were not just broken open. They were arranged in a pattern, as if dragged across the room deliberately. I stepped back, handling my light. It wasn't random. They formed a circle. At its center lay a bundle of photographs, curled and yellow. I crouched, picking them up one by one. Faces stared back at me. Scientists, assistants, security staff, each with black ink scribbled over their eyes. On the back of the last photo, scrawled in the same jagged hand as the chalkboard message, were the words, "Sacrifice for the stars." The air shifted. The hum began again, low at first, then growing. The projector flickered back to life without touch, casting more of those impossible shadows across the dome. This time, the shapes weren't just twisting, they were forming. Arms, legs, faces without eyes, and in the middle of it all, a figure that wasn't human at all. Tall, elongated, its head bent unnaturally toward the ceiling. The shadows turned their heads toward me. I backed away slowly, my hand instinctively going to the revolver on my hip. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the floor, rattling the walls. The projector whirred, its wheels spinning faster, throwing grotesque images across every inch of the dome. Then the telescope itself groaned. Metal screeched as gears shifted, ancient mechanisms moving for the first time in decades. Slowly, it began to rotate, its cracked lens aligning with the heavens above, and I realized what the carvings had warned about. Do not open the lens. Because as the telescope aligned, something in the air tore. A fissure of light, wrong and blinding, seared through the chamber. The shadows surged toward it, writhing, screaming without sound. My body shook under the force of it, my ears ringing. I staggered back, shouting into the void, "Who are you? What do you want?" The voices answered all at once, a chorus from the static, "We want to come through." The light pouring from the cracked telescope lens burned like nothing natural, searing into my eyes even when I turned away. The hum had become a roar, the kind you feel in your bones, deeper than sound itself. I fought to steady my breathing, to hold on to logic, but every instinct screamed at me. This place was not meant for humans to enter. I ducked behind the telescope's base, shielding myself from the unbearable glare. The photographs I had found slipped from my hand and scattered across the floor. As they tumbled, the projector's light caught one of them differently, not in the way a photo should reflect, but as if it were transparent, showing another scene layered beneath. I picked it up again, squinting. Beneath the scratched-out face of the scientist, there was something faint, an image of the observatory itself, but distorted, stretched into impossible geometry. And beneath the building's silhouette, more words appeared, as though revealed by the light. The door was opened on the equinox. It cannot be closed. A chill coursed through me. The telescope wasn't just a tool for observing the sky. It was a key designed to open a passage to connect this place with something beyond. The missing people hadn't just disappeared. They had been taken, pulled into that fracture of light, or worse offered. I forced myself to focus. The carvings on the catwalk railing had been warning. Whoever worked here last had understood too late what they'd done. If I didn't act now, the door would stay open, and those things, whatever they were, would come through fully. The question was, how do you close a door that was never supposed to exist? The shadows around me shifted again, coalescing. Faces stretched from the dark, empty sockets fixed on me. They whispered my name like a chant. Dear Spears. I drew my revolver. The barrel trembled slightly in my grip. Shooting shadows was madness, but the human mind clings to simple answers when cornered. One step forward, then another. I aimed at the projector first. If this device was fueling their manifestation, destroying it might break their hold. The first shot cracked through the chamber, echoing like thunder. The projector sparked, reels jerking wildly. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in silence. I fired again, shattering the lens. The machine collapsed into itself with a hiss of smoke. For a moment, the whispers faltered. The shadows lost form, slipping back into the walls like oil in water. But the telescope still groaned, its gears grinding. The crack of light widened. A wind began to pull toward it, tugging at my coat, dragging the scattered papers across the floor. The dome shook violently, bolts raining from the ceiling. I braced myself, gripping the railing. My eyes darted across the room, searching for any mechanism that could reverse the telescope's alignment. And then I saw it, a rusted control panel half buried under debris, its switches corroded but intact. I staggered toward it, every step a battle against the pull of the fissure. My boots skidded on the blood-stained floor. One of the shadows surged from the wall, forming into a skeletal hand that grasped my ankle. I kicked hard, my heels smashing through it. The shadow dissolved into smoke, but more were emerging, dozens, their eyeless faces stretching toward me. I reached the panel and slammed my hand down on the main switch. Nothing. Then panic clawed at me. I ripped open the panel, wires spilling like entrails. Most were severed, chewed through by rust and time, but one wire still thrummed faintly with power, leading back to a humming generator in the corner. If I could route it, I tore off my gloves and twisted the exposed ends together. Sparks burst, searing my fingers, but the panel shuddered to life. Lights flickered weakly across its face. The telescope let out a groan, resisting the pull of the mechanism. The shadows screamed, all at once this time, their shrieks piercing into my skull. The woman appeared again at the edge of the fissure, her form flickering like a dying signal. Her voice cut through the chaos, desperate. You can't stop it. It's already chosen. I gritted my teeth, slamming the lever down. The telescope shuddered violently, its gears grinding against themselves. The beam of light sputtered, fracturing into shards. The pull grew stronger, dragging everything toward the rift. Debris, broken glass, the scattered photos. Even the shadows were being pulled in, clawing at the floor, their featureless mouths opening in silent terror. The woman reached for me, her face twisting with anguish. For a moment, her hand brushed mine, cold, human. And then she was yanked into the fissure, vanishing with the others. With one final groan, the telescope's lens snapped. Glass shattered, spraying across the dome. The beam of light imploded, sucking itself inward until only darkness remained. The chamber fell silent. I collapsed to the floor, chest heaving, the stink of ozone and burnt metal thick in the air. The whispers were gone. The shadows had dissolved, and the fissure, whatever it was sealed. For several minutes, I just sat there in the dark, revolver limp in my hand. My birthday had come and gone hours ago. Instead of cake and laughter, I had spent it wrestling with the kind of horror no one should ever see. By dawn, I dragged myself out of the observatory. The desert air was cold, biting. Behind me, the dome loomed against the rising sun, silent once again. But I knew better than to think it was over. Places like this don't die. They wait, they hunger. And me, I'm just a fool who keeps answering their call. I lit a cigarette with shaking hands, exhaled into the pale morning light, and muttered to myself, "Happy birthday, Pierce. Hell of a way to celebrate."